Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Manav, Achan, and the elevated Hotelivate team for having us over here. A quick introduction of our panel. I'll start with Sanjeev. Sanjeev has recently joined Indian Hotels Company as the Vice President Development. Currently, they're operating under 3 brands, Taj, Vivanta, and Ginger. Moving on to Rohit. Rohit is the Managing Director, India for Staywell Hospitality. Globally, they operate 75 hotels under 8 brands, 3 brands out of which are in India, Leisure Inn, Park Regis, and do not ask me the 3rd brand. Owners and operators of their business, so that's Rohit for you. Moving on to Saurabh. Saurabh is the Global Head of Development for Jiang and Louvre Hotels. They collectively own many such cookie cutter and other brands. And with the recent acquisition of Saurabh in India, they have a big stable of brands, and I'm sure we will value very much from inputs that will come from there. So thank you very much. And moving on, if I was to just take a minute and not get into the cookie cutter approach or not, but just say select service as a model, in the Western world, the select service model was typically, by definition, was a trade-off to remove the high input labor costs and use those cost savings to give the benefit to the consumer via a lower pricing. Now, moving on to India, where we all, I think, agree to the fact that the Indian customer always wants more for less, but is unwilling to pay the revenue premium for that more. Do we think select service as a model can work in this country? And Rohit, I'll start with you. What's your view?
Okay. I think if you look at the history of India, we're all about rich heritage, kings, palaces, jewels. So, and all these were sustained by the manning and the labor force that we always had. So, going forward, I think in terms of select service hotels, the consumers in India, the customers are definitely spoiled for choice. Because you had large brands, very famous brands like Taj and Oberoi's set the standard when they opened the hospitality business in this country. A lot of customers who could not afford to stay there would go dine there. And this perception was made of a hotel means at least better than home. Even if you look at the mid-segment today, the flavor of water changes every 100 miles we go. The taste for our food changes every 100 miles we go. So the cookie-cutter approach definitely can't work here. A customer expects at least what he gets at home, which is food available to him on his beck and call, someone to pick up his luggage, take it to the room, and then a service standard, especially when he's paying 3,500 or 4,000 rupees. And furthermore, I think going forward, the new youth, the new mid-segment, that the middle class, is definitely a very hands-on sort of customer. So I would say we're probably way too early for select cookie-cutter hotels, but maybe in the next 15, 20 years, we should be ready for such sort of developments and projects.
Okay, that's great. So thank you. So you're saying select service as a model also does not work in India currently?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Sanjeev, what's your view?
I kind of echo what he's saying, because as far as we are concerned, in my previous avatar, we did try and bring in a brand which was supposed to be cookie cutter. And we had to tweak it, finally. And today, it's actually working like a full-service brand. So I don't think that we have been able to succeed as far as India is concerned yet, where we can say that confidently that there is something known as a select service, and it's been successful. So I think we have some time to go as far as select services are concerned. We still are mid-market. We have to have all the services going.
So you're saying you had a select service brand in the stable,
Yes.
but you moved already to a full service brand.
In my previous
in your
journey, in my previous avatar,
right.
I've just come here, so we're going to do something different. In fact, as you know, that we have a ginger brand in our portfolio. And while we speak, we are going to be tweaking that brand to suit the Indian customer and try and give him something more. It also started as a select service brand once, if you remember, when it started. But I think now we have realized that we need to tweak it a bit. So as far as, if you really look at a cookie cutter select service brand, most probably that will come in another 5-10 years as India's economy grows, the maturity grows, and the other cities that we are talking about, these 100 cities that are going to come into play, where the traveler then decides which segment you want to stay in and is ready to pay that kind of price, and is also educated, because as you see, India is now moving into this buzzword is millennial, and these guys like to work with their hands. They're exposed to a lot of stuff that is happening overseas, and I think they may be able to accept, taking their luggage up on a trolley and maybe just going out and taking a chocolate bar from the lobby or picking up ice from the ice pantry. But right now, I think there's a problem.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Saurabh?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the evolution of the cookie cutting and select service thing. And I can bring two examples to this panel. One is that of Europe, where we have about 500 cookie cut budget and mid-market hotels. And I'll come down to India, where we've got 10 odd cookie cut select service plus hotels. So in Europe, we have two cookie cut brands. One's Premier Class, which is a budget brand, a truly select service, very standardized cookie cut product. A typical 80-room Premier Class runs with 4 people. So in Europe, the labor costs are very high, the social charges are very high. So again, it's designed to minimize the labor cost. And it's a true example of a select service hotel, because there's no food and beverage except cold breakfast. So you go in, you pick your tray, there's a juice dispenser, there's a milk dispenser, and a cereal dispenser. That's it. You take your bowl, you eat your cereals, put the tray back, the receptionist comes from the back, takes the trolley away, it's done. For the rest of the day, you've got vending machines and other options nearby. And that's a brilliant business model. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to invest into one, and it gives me more money than my salary. But that said, the second example of a cookie cut brand is Campanile, but that's not select service. That's full service. Now, coming down to India, through our acquisition of Saurabh last year, we got Home Chill, which is actually a select service plus brand, because it is not select service. It has full food and beverage, in some cases a pool as well. But that's more driven by the market dynamics than anything else. And it's a tricky one, because as Rohit said, the consumer here expects a bit of F&B. For breakfast, you need at least something warm. I mean, you can't get away with cereals here in India. You need an omelette which is hot enough for, when it comes to the breakfast table, or a paratha or whatever. And then, people expect some sort of food for lunch and dinner. Now, you have that if you're doing basic food and beverage, which does not cost much. Then you think, okay, look, I've got a kitchen, I'm doing food and beverage, why don't I do a banquet where I make more money out of it? So it sort of goes into a different tangent altogether.
There is never an end to it. It starts from one, and then it just keeps going from one to the other. And I think we all agree that the Indian consumer is used to a full-service concept, right? Starting from the lowest denominator, going to guest houses. They're very used to the fact that they get the guy. Now, it could be a single person, but he can do his laundry, he can run errands, he can buy food of whatever his choice would be. So we're all saying kind of that select service as a model in itself would not work in the country. And ergo, we are saying that it's a full service or a quasi-full service model that will work in this country. If that's the case, do you think a cookie cutter approach, a templatized, standardized approach will work in the country? And if I throw another ring in it, that would would it be something, given the fact that you could have brownfield and greenfield projects, you could have owned where you can possibly do it a lot better, you would have managed hotels where you may not be. Do you think the cookie cutter approach can be deployed to this full service, quasi full service model? What's your view, Sanjeev?
See, as long as you are the owner, obviously you can dictate whatever you want to, and if that's your philosophy and that's your way of doing business, then that's fine. And if you can go ahead and do these hotels all over and prove to the large community that you're making a lot of money and it's a successful brand, that's great. But if you go to an owner and if you try and sell this brand to him or this concept to him, I do not know whether they would buy it, but as far as we are concerned till today, I see that it's failed, all right? So we will have
Sorry, it's failed.
It has failed, you know, that people are not ready to accept that kind of, even if you go to these Oyo rooms and everything else, even there you have more or less full service. They're you know, fully serviced rooms. You have a restaurant, you have bars, you even have a little laundry. So things, as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, you will have to understand that we will have to put in these services, maybe at a shrunk level, but you will have to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Rohit?
Just adding to what Sanjeev was saying earlier, if you're an owner, you can build how you like. But being a management company, and an owner comes up to you and says, "Hey, great, I like the coffee shop, I love the standard rooms, but I want to add a specialty restaurant, you know. I think it's going to do justice. I want to keep it pure vegetarian, because I think the community will really respect it." So, and we have a brand called Leisure Inn, which started operating in Australia, and then we moved it to India. F&B is profitable in our country. So it's very difficult to tell an owner that it is a profitable venture, but we're cookie cutter and we cannot do it. So, and then you've got competition. You know, you have all the brands in the world sitting here today. So I think it's very important for anyone, whether it is a brand or even, for example, any other industry that you're in, you must make your product as per local customization. And in India, F&B is profitable, meeting rooms are profitable. You will not get the corporate business if you don't have a meeting room in your hotel. Are you ready to let go of that pie? Especially in the mid-segment or in the select hotel segment, select service hotel segment, 40–50% of the revenue comes from, you know, these sort of restaurants, bars, as well as meeting rooms and conference rooms. So it's very difficult, you know, to continue with that approach, forgetting about the consumer, forgetting about your target customer, and saying, "Hey, I want to do this."
Thank you. Saurabh?
Yeah, to me, a cookie-cut product, specifically product, and a select service plus or quasi select service, they go hand in hand. So that's one statement. The other statement, and I'll try to combine the two, there's a direct correlation with the price a customer is paying to the expectation he has. Now, we're talking about select service plus or whatever, that's at a low price point. So the expectations of the consumer are lower. So, I mean, they know what they're paying and they don't expect much, broadly speaking. And it's important to have that cookie-cut solution to a select service plus hotel because it helps development cost down, it brings standardization, it enhances the operational process optimization. I mean, the example I was giving of Premier Class in Europe, I mean, you know, the way it's built is reception has a door back to the dining area where they're able to manipulate, take back the trolleys and all that. All these efficiencies are actually thought through. All this has gone through an evolution of 20 years. And why not use that? Because they really are reducing the cost, lowering your number of your payroll. Why not? So it just goes hand in hand. And just another fact to that, it will come here in India, and it probably is already beginning. there has been a lot of improvements and technological improvements in modular constructions. I mean, you know, I've seen some concepts which are wow. And I think it's inevitable that modular construction would come into play for hotel developments and other development. And if that comes into play, it's going to be a cookie cut anyway.
You know, so you brought out an interesting point that globally, it's a templatized model and they have certain metrics. And for all of us in mid-market and budget hotels, it's a very ratio-driven business. It's a very metric-driven business, and that's what gets you the yields. And should you not comply with that, you can actually go quite all right with that. Now, given the fact that we're saying that we're not going to be select service, we have to be this quasi-full service. I also kind of hear that it cannot be a cookie cutter or a templatized approach to it. You'd have to keep customizing city by city, owner by owner, and so on and so forth. What do you think are going to be the key issues that operators would have to focus on to make sure that there is viability of that business model?
So I think they'll have to play with the design. And they'll have to maintain the room structure, and you can call it that cookie cutter, that fits into that brand. And as far as food and beverage is concerned, they should create spaces and services that can be let out, and you can get rental out of that. So you keep your staff ratios more or less the same. You sublet areas so that you get rental. And also in India, well, it doesn't fit into this brand, but in India, banqueting, socials, etc., are big business. And if you can somehow attach yourself to maybe a large banquet hall or a lawn or whatever you can, so that you can get, you can attract socials coming into your product, you can actually let that ground also out and then make some money out of that. So actually, you'll have to think about your product and also advise the promoter how to go about it so that actually you make sure that your brand standards and your brand differentiators are all put into place. And you still sit with him and you think like the owner and advise him as to what he should do with that plot of land or whatever the FSI he's got available so that he can make some more money and also give the services that are required, but in a limited manner.
So you're saying deployment of space, utilization, distribution,
100%.
and therefore development cost is something that one would have to focus on. Is there anything else that, Rohit, would you like to contribute? Anything on standard operating procedures to improve productivity? Anything else that you can?
So obviously ROI is very important, and economies of scale, once they kick in, your hotel's going to be running more efficiently. So if you really look at even brands over the years, from the brand really being in your face all the time, now it's become more discreet. Before you used to have signage on the outside, signage in the room, a lot of collateral lying everywhere, your brand on your shampoo, your conditioner, even on the toilet roll, on the stickers, yeah? But it's not happening anymore. So I think we're really moving away from, the brand being in the face, but your key brand elements need to be in place. And for a cookie cutter model, the key brand elements, I think, one, as he said, size of the room is important. Standard operating procedures, very important, as long as you can find the right human resources to do that. Like, we operate a hotel in Japan, 5,000 rooms, only about 1,000 people working in there, But multitasking, education, it all has to come together to make it successful. Key brand elements, you can still carry on. For example, branding collateral, which is the closest to an operator, you can standardize that by putting it, on cloud, so the owner or the general manager doesn't need to go out to an agency. So you can have standardization in a lot of software, but I think in the hardware aspect, as years goes along, we're moving away from that.
Absolutely, you're quite right. I think it's going to be a combination of A plus B plus C, which still makes sure that we're not moving away from the core of the model so that the ROI stays in place, the yields come there, because the revenue premium may not start kicking in as early as we'd like it to be. Sir, what are your views?
Look, I mean, to answer that, I would like to bring an example of McDonald's. It's sort of on the pricing point, it's comparable to the Select Service Plus. It's a cookie cut thing. And McDonald's spend a lot of time designing their outlets, and they don't let an owner or the lessee, in many cases, touch the design element. I mean, it's down to perfection. Then comes the standard operating procedures, all that, everyone goes for training, and it's really done to perfection, and it delivers. And I think in that segment, that's really what you need. You can't, you can't let someone interfere with the design and all that, because there's no limit then. This is it. This is a block. This is how it does, and it's done to perfection. But if I mean, for example, in a Premier class room, we don't have doors for the wardrobes because we think it's unnecessary, and it cuts the cost down or whatever. I mean, this is a small example. But I've seen budget hotels with white carpets. It doesn't work then it doesn't add up.
So I think this balance possibly would need to be struck in between, because you would possibly have some minimum brand standards, some minimum standards of how the hotel should be built out so that you can get efficiencies come into it, because that's eventually what's going to lead to the ROI. And I also hear people as a very important component for our business. They're critical to the business, and it's also the significant cost contributor. And that's the interesting phase where we are in today as mid-market and budget hotels with the government intervention in minimum wages. There is going to be a reduction in labor arbitrage, which essentially means that labor costs will go up. And therefore, how do you think that we can use possibly technology and people to come collaboratively with the constant effort of reducing the manpower cost or optimizing that? Do you think there's stuff that can be done on technology and people? And I know a lot of brands have started doing that. I'm unsure how much of that has actually taken place in India, but I'm sure with a lot of global background, you would have some interesting stories, interesting illustrations from your stable to share with us. So, Rohit, would you?
I think, great. I think the labor laws are changing. We need to pay more. It's going to add to your payroll cost. As long as the retention reduces, I think that is the key. I think more than payroll, what hurts a hotel is the training that is required to actually get a new employee, induct him, put him on board, teach him the processes. So we're very excited if, labor laws will allow the employees, will educate the employees to stay longer in your organization, grow within the organization. Because why put so much emphasis on human resources is because, fortunately or unfortunately, the hotel business is all about manning. It's a hands-on business. Someone serves you a cup of tea. Someone's checking you in. But as Saurabh said, overseas, there's a lot of IT. I don't want to be specific, but in some of our mid-segment hotels, we have things like handy phones disappearing. In India, I get my weighing machines stolen. So, and because this is the customer, don't forget, paying 2,500 to 3,000 rupees. And so I think it's an education process, also a process of, adhering to the laws of the country. And part of all of this, I think we should be able to retain the employees with the new labor laws, drill down the training even better, and then hopefully, as I said, probably 10 years from now, the cookie cutter approach would be much more simpler.
Have you used technology in your hotels in any form to deliver this quasi-full service model?
Yes, actually. If one of our hotels in Jaipur, technology has various forms. Yeah, you have business intelligence, which captures all your sort of financial data and then replicates it to the owners. So it's all on the mobile phone now. No need of long P&Ls, 30-page documents, monthly reports. We also use technology, obviously, as simple as an iPad, where you use it as a menu. So there's less wear and tear. It's very exciting, especially in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. It becomes a talking point when you launch a restaurant and you've got your menu on the iPad. And then we also obviously use IT. We're just testing a product at one of our hotels where the customer can order room service, can ask his shirt to be ironed, dry cleaned, laundry, basically a concierge on the app. To further reduce customer complaints, because as long as there's human interaction, there is a chance of not noting down the right thing or getting the wrong product across to the customer. And then further also enhancing the time period that is required for a customer to place an order and then wait for it to come into his room. So we are trying to introduce all these processes within the group.
This button here, you see, it's a long shot, but very soon, and it's already here, you're going to be doing everything on the phone. As far as your check-ins are concerned, placing your order is concerned, opening your room is concerned, except for most probably cleaning up your room. And there also, I think people are going to very soon get into robotics. So I don't know what the future is going to be coming in the coming near future. But as far as your question on people and their salary and wages cost is concerned, I don't know, it's going to go through a drastic change as we progress into the future for hoteliering. Things are going to change dramatically. And maybe then you can call it, we will be able to produce a product which you could say that this is cookie cutter, and just do this is the cost to it, and most probably you just need the minimum amount of people to run it. It's coming, so, but we don't have a pulse of it yet, but it's coming. And we read about it on a regular basis, so I don't know. Finally, is the hospitality going to be about people serving people, or is it going to be robots serving people? What's going to be? But maybe that the segmentation will change, and the luxury hotel guys will most probably have some people serving you. But down the line, it may change dramatically.
Absolutely, and if I may, True by Hilton as a new brand, as a new product that has been created is fairly templatized, cookie cutter in their approach of what they've done, but they've deployed technology very nicely and efficiently for bridging that gap. Saurabh, would you have examples of technology being deployed in guest interfacing to kind of deliver this quasi-full service and improve operating efficiencies?
We are actually working on a prototype and coming up with actually a new brand in China to start with, called Smart Hotel. Without divulging into too much details on that, but just to give you an idea, it's actually a very automated hotel. So right from, the easy ones where you have key cards on your mobile and you enter your room with that. You have voice-enabled devices like Alexa's, where you say, Alexa, what's the weather outside? Or Alexa, can you connect me to operator? Things like that. With sort of iRobos in the room, so it senses when the guest is out, it cleans it vacuums the floor, completely automated, with some robos as well for fun, and children love it. So we are working on concepts like that. And we've had many feedback, and this is so far in China only, and the Chinese love it. So, who knows when that will come out and what will happen to it. But it's natural evolution. More and more technology will come to hotels, especially at that price point, because it's all about efficiencies. It's really going down to bones and making it work from a return perspective.
And just to add to that, we're actually also, if you look at the airlines today, you can choose your seat before you check in. And I know a lot of hotel companies now, you can choose your hotel room. Where do you want to stay? What room number before you check in on the app? So, which really, especially when you have large groups coming in, you have weddings, want rooms together on the same floor, etc. And I've seen a lot of hotels mess that up. When you have a large group, weddings, and the family can't stay together, they're in Block A, Block B, Block C. So I think adding efficiency as well as reducing customer complaints through information technology.
Absolutely. I think there are lots of stuff that would eventually come in and should start coming in much sooner, which is to do with both guest experience improvement as well as operating efficiencies, whether it's a kiosk check-in, whether it's select your room before checking in, for example, or concierge, or ordering your room service via mobile or an app. Tell me another thing, which is, all of us in this mid-market and budget space, so while we are not cookie cutter in our approach on deployment across, it's a fairly standardized product. And let me leave location aside for a moment because that can change the entire equation. Price, I fundamentally believe, is market-driven. So leaving aside location and price, what do you think you have used very well in your respective organizations as great differentiators within this category? Rohit, with you?
As I started off, I think F&B plays a vital role in all my hotels, whether they're leisure inns, mid-segment. We sell the room between, sometimes off-season, between 2,500 to 3,000 rupees. But you get your banquet space, you get your restaurant, you get 24 hours room service. So F&B, I think, plays a critical role. Also, don't forget, Anshu, we have this big segment of guest houses in India, right? And I don't want to open up another debate, but, and then you've got, Oyo, Make My Trip, all these big marketing companies sitting there promoting, all these unbranded places. And today, the customer in that segment is really, really price conscious, unless and until your company is paying for it. So I think it's very important, especially in our country, which has a lot of unbranded hotel rooms, has a lot of guest houses, for select service to have certain facilities which are much beyond what the bottom tier is offering.
Absolutely. So we do cater to an extremely price promiscuous customer. And you're saying food and beverage, which typically is also high cost,
yes,
relatively a lower profitability, is what has worked for you
yes,
with your brands. And that's globally.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Within India.
Saurabh?
Look, it's a difficult question. I mean, altogether, we've got 49 brands with different markers and distinguishing factors. So, yeah, it ranges from F&B to our company brand, to the quality of bedding and quality of rooms for Portico at that price point, to a sort of a traveler's theme, to our carryout. So it's really vague, but every brand has distinguishing factors, which makes it unique. And
you have
with the
many
intention
brands to go through.
Sorry?
You have many brands to go through and many that you have to differentiate within your stable.
No, it is very expensive to maintain a brand. And I mean, we face this challenge all the time. I mean, we question ourselves, do we have too many? But so far, it works.
Great, thank you. Sanjeev.
Like I said, I'm a little new to the stable, so I don't know what to comment on the differentiator. Maybe Rahul Pandit sitting out there can talk about it later. But I think what's been worked on is the same as theory, that let's give them much more value for money and create these services are being upgraded. And also a lot of interaction between the client and the hotel people. So they feel that they're talking to somebody that they know. I think that's the whole philosophy now. So a fun place, energetic place where people connect with each other, and it's a place where you can come and just relax. So something like that. That philosophy is being worked on right now. I'll be able to comment more on it maybe after another 2 weeks once we've done that. But it'll be a very, very good design. It'll be the differentiator will be noticed.
That'll be an interesting thing, so we will look out for it in a couple of weeks' time. Because it's actually a very nebulous area that how do you really deliver this value for money without layering more costs to the model? Because fundamentally, we all know we're not going to get a revenue premium for that. And what therefore could be these product differentiators that could really work within this space? And yes, Ginger has done a whole lot of work in that, improvement in the public spaces, the whole check-in experience, etc. And I think that's where you're saying that there is a differentiation from a food and beverage in that perspective that's really coming in. Do you think, as the Indian consumer is becoming or will become, and that's possibly over the next decade, it's not something which is in the midterm for sure, moves towards being a DIY, do-it-yourself customer, do you think that's when select service in the true sense of it as a cookie cutter model will be more relevant to the Indian market, or it doesn't appear to be the case in even the long term.
No, I think in the long term it'll work. It is actually already, if you look at the promoters and the people who own hotels, they're already questioning all the models. And as we grow into this market further, like I said, India has the largest millennial population, all right? And they are traveling, they are getting used to this idea. People are now living in smaller houses, they're doing their laundry themselves, so it's all getting there. But I think it's going to take another 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 6 years, I don't know, but it'll come there. It'll happen. So as far as I'm concerned, sooner than later it'll happen. So you will see a cookie cutter situation because as people look for more profits, people look for more return on investment, they will do this.
They will do this.
100%.
And you think the Indian consumer will also buy it?
Will buy it, yeah, will buy it.
The
because they'll be prepared for it then. Right now, I think it's a little early.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Rohit?
I agree with Sanjeev. I think, India is a lot about emotion, touch and feel, as we are today. Most of the Indian owners build their first hotel out of emotion, not as a business strategy. So I think we have some time over the next 8 to 10 years to really develop this model carefully and ensure that we have operational efficiencies as well as have the right product in place. Also, I feel that, the beauty about our country is that we are, or as I said, things are not perfect, right? And the cookie cutter approach usually works in the perfect sort of scenarios. We have some time to go. I think it's a learning curve for all of us today. And maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, if we get our infrastructure right, we get the labor laws in place, we get, honest, ethical longevity with the labor, definitely very successful model globally, but still not ready for us here yet.
And the consumer appreciating the reason why there is a product of this particular type, and therefore there is this price to it.
Yes.
Absolutely, I agree. Saurabh, what are your views?
To me, DIY culture or not, cookie cutters makes total sense from a construction cost point of view, from efficiencies point of view, whatever. Whilst I agree with you that it cannot be 100% perfect. So until we reach that stage, I mean, at least we should follow the 80-20 rule, where we get the cookie cut approach for 80% of the product and leave that 20 to play around with the local flavors, local cultures, local influence, and that is the difference. But to select service, I think there may be a more shift when the DIY culture kicks in, because then people will become more used to walking to the ice cream machines to fetch ice rather than calling reception for delivering the ice. And there's some people in the room who would know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, that's where the whole shift of attitude will come.
Absolutely. And I think all of us in some formats or the other, when we started off with the select service model, had many of this. Some part of it works, some does not. Food in bag, for example, or food in box, sorry, for example, whichever way you want to put it, turning into a full-plated room service model, starting from limited time restaurants to 18-hour restaurant timings. I think all of us have kind of tweaked it. We'd probably all love it if the shift happens sooner than not, but it clearly appears that select service model, as the definition stands, is not something that is currently, is not something that's going to be very relevant in the Indian market. It is going to be a quasi or a sort of a full service model. We'd possibly have to use technology, standard operating procedures, better deployment and utilization of labor, getting them at the right price, training them, multi-skilling them to make sure that we're getting better efficiencies. To deliver to this consumer who wants a lot more, unwilling to pay that revenue premium. So
Anshu, just to add there, we all want to operate efficiently. Hey, we all want, our manning ratios to be 0.5. But the good thing is that we've got the largest youth population in the world today. We've got a growing middle class, and they're traveling overseas, right? We're the second largest traveler to Singapore now, after KL, in terms of outbound from here. So I think it's an education process, because once you experience a product like that, and an overseas destination, then you really get to enjoy the benefits of the cookie cutter approach, both in terms of the owners, as well as in terms of the customer. So I think, as I said, in the next 8 to 10 years, we'd be ready for it.
It'll be good to watch out and good to see what happens over that time. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.